presentation we have. Welcome once again to a Sydney Mining Club lunch event. My name is Steve Galilee. I'm the Chief Executive of the New South Wales Minerals Council, and I will be your MC for today. Julian sends his regards. He's in India of all places. He's not exploring or looking for new investments. He's at an event wedding, which goes over several days and apparently involves the hiring of a range of different cultural costumes to meet local expectations. So we look forward to the photos of Julian in culturally appropriated costumes at some point in the future. I'm sure he'll be throwing himself into it with gusto. So you got me for today. Our first Sydney Mining Club event for 2026. So we ended last year focusing on critical minerals, and we start this year in a similar fashion because I saw David Malt here and some other coal guys in the crowd. While coal may still be king, critical minerals are the new black, right? Glad someone got the joke. We're going to be hearing a lot today about Donald, not Australia's greatest batsman, and I say batsman, not batter, batsman, Donald Bradman, not even US President Donald Trump, although he'd be interested in the other Donald we're going to hear about today. I'm talking, of course, about the Donald Rare Earth and Mineral Sands Project, or DMS, in Victoria's Wimmera region. The Donald President Trump would be interested in the Donald Project, or DMS, because it's widely regarded as one of the world's best near-term sources of rare earth elements outside China, making it one of the most strategically significant critical minerals projects currently under development in Australia. Today we will hear from Tiger Brown, the Chief Executive Officer of Astron Corporation, and Mark Chalmers, the President and CEO of Energy Fuels. Energy Fuels and Astron are joint venture partners in the Donald Project. The project received its final major regulatory approval in June last year, clearing the path towards financing and a final investment decision. Today, Tiger and Mark will discuss the strategic importance of Donald, the development pathway ahead, and the role of Australia in supplying secure allied rare earths to global markets. Now, Mark had intended to be here in person, but a late and unavoidable change to his travel plans has prevented him from being here today. And while this is unfortunate, we've moved quickly to make some alternative arrangements, and I would like to particularly thank Joel. Where's Joel? Where is he? He's standing by on the IT help desk. Is Joel, because today we get to experience a first together. How exciting. And it's not just a first for the Sydney Mining Club. Apparently, I've just been told it's a first for this venue as well, to have a presentation delivered virtually from across the other side of the globe. What could go wrong? After nearly 30 years, it's the first virtual presentation for the Mining Club, and I find it hard to believe, but apparently the first virtual presentation for this event, maybe just for this particular system. It's a new system. What could go wrong, right? So Mark is going to be joining us live from across the globe in Lakewood, Colorado, where Energy Fuels is based, 225 Union Boulevard, Lakewood, to be precise. So please accept our apologies for the late change of arrangements, and please also accept my personal apologies in advance if we have any IT glitches. Let's hope that things run smoothly. And while we don't have Mark with us here in person, we do have Tiger Brown from Astron here with us live and in the flesh. Can we welcome Tiger, who's down here on the front desk? Thank you, Tiger. And both Tiger and Mark will take your questions after both presentations have concluded. But before all that, some thank yous. Firstly, a big thank you to our sponsors, our gold sponsors, Bear Dolbear Australia and AME Group, our silver sponsors, Broken Hill Mines, Invertia, the New South Wales Minerals Council, Taurus Funds Management, Fender Geophysics, Tees, Veritas Securities, CRE Insurance, Ioneer Kingsgate, RFC Ambrian, IMARC, AMEC, APM Graphics, Research as a Service, and the Stock Network. Thank you to all our sponsors. Their banners are out the front. They support this club. Please support them with your business too. Can you give a round of applause to our sponsors, please? And in case I forget at the end, can I also extend a thank you to James, to Joel, who I've already thanked, to Julia, to Simon and the other members of the Sydney Mining Club team for putting on this event and for putting on so many great events over the course of last year as well. Thank you to you as well. Can we give them a quick round of applause for their efforts? Thank you. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's a very important year this year for mining here in New South Wales. Planning decisions this year that will be made in this state will shape the future of mining in New South Wales for decades to come. We have 38 operating coal mines here in New South Wales, and a few are set to close in 2030 or soon after. But there are another 10 of those 38 currently operating coal mines that are currently seeking planning approvals to extend their operating lives in New South Wales for longer into the future. And several of those key applications will be determined sometime during the course of this year. And of those applications, of those 10 applications, there are 8,000 coal miners currently working at those operations across New South Wales. So that represents almost 1/3 of the New South Wales coal mining workforce, whose jobs in the medium to long term, and in some cases short term, because one of those consents ends late this year, early next year, those jobs aren't threatened by any sudden fall in global coal demand, because we know that coal demand is strong and is expected to remain strong for quite a long time yet. Those jobs are threatened by perverse outcomes from the New South Wales planning system. So we need those approvals, and we have those projects working through the planning pipeline and getting through to their determination authorities, the Independent Planning Commission and others. We need those approvals to protect those jobs and to make sure those operations can continue for as long as demand is there for the coal that they are mining into the future. It's a job-saving strategy. It's a regional development strategy. It's a transition strategy, and the New South Wales government should support that. In our non-coal, in our metals sector, again, there are several important approvals this year that will be decided within the New South Wales government planning framework. We have just seen the Constellation project approved just before Christmas, and that is welcome in relation to mining activities out near Cobar, but we need to see more. We've got a number of signature metals mining projects fully permitted and shovel ready, looking for investment and moving towards that outcome. And I see Rob's here from the government, and I know he's listening closely, and I know he's working hard with a lot of those proponents to help get that investment here in New South Wales. But we have other applications in the planning system for metals and critical minerals projects working their way through the planning pipeline, looking for their consents this year too. So in addition to those coal mining applications, which are so important for the future of our coal sector, we have applications that are important strategically for the long-term future of our industry more generally, as we get more metals and critical minerals projects through the pipeline, fully approved, shovel ready, the investment attracted and into operation, so that we have a mining industry here, a strong and diverse mining industry here for the long term. That is this year's challenge from our perspective here in New South Wales. There's lots of opportunity, but lots of work to do. And hey, it's an election year, right? We've only got just over 12 months out from a state election. So again, what could possibly go wrong there? But enough of New South Wales. Let me turn our gaze south of the border to the Donald Project. And have you had a chance to eat yet, Tiger? You have. All right, good. So I'm going to introduce our first speaker, Tiger Brown, who, as I said earlier, is the Chief Executive Officer of Astron Corporation. From 2018 to 2021, he held various business development, planning and executive roles within Astron in both China and Australia. Since his appointment as Managing Director in 2021, he's led Donald Project Development, working with a skilled internal team of operational, commercial and professional personnel and consultants. He holds a bachelor's degree in Science and Economics from Wharton and is the largest shareholder in Astron. Will you please join me in welcoming Tiger to the stage?
Thank you all. Really appreciate the kind introduction. It's great to be here today and give everyone an update on our plans on bringing mining back to the state of Victoria through the Donald project. It was interesting hearing the New South Wales context. So yeah, everyone's favourite conversation topic in New South Wales, I'm sure, a Victorian project. Look, we are operating in a space that is continuing to excite in relation to the products that we do produce. In relation to rare earths, it's certainly not escaped some of our leaders' conversations in the last 2 years. For those of you who are unfamiliar with Astron, allow me to give you a quick introduction. So we're a mineral sands and rare earths developer focused on the world-class, globally significant Donald Rare Earths and Mineral Sands project. It is significant in as far as its resource size, being the world's largest zircon project with 22.1 million tonnes of zircon resource. For context, the global zircon demand annually at the moment is around 1.2 million tonnes. In addition to the zircon, we are the 4th largest rare earth project outside of China. And what's significant about our rare earth mix is that it's not just the light rare earths, but we also contain significant heavy rare earths, and as far as dysprosium and the terbium, which are more strategic in relation to the rare earth suite. They are critical minerals, and they are critical minerals, and heavy rare earths is one of them. On the project itself, given the size and the scale of the project, we're looking at commercializing it over a number of phases. The first phase, what we have an existing granted mining license over and all our approvals for, covers an area of 27 square kilometres and covers only 17% of our global resource. We are taking a phased development approach with regards to this project, realising economic value over time. And in September, in July last year, we updated the project economics to show that phase 1 alone by itself delivers an NPV pre-tax of 837 million and a forecast EBITDA of 120 million per year over its 41-year mine life. It's important to note that phase 1/6 of the global resource can support mining for 41 years. We are effectively creating the mineral sands of, I guess, the Pilbara region in Victoria through this development. I'll get to tag on the speech before Mark, so I get to get a few points in before him. But before choosing Energy Fuels as our partner, we ran our process ourselves. We looked at all the options that were available to us to commercialise our rare earth part of our product stream. Astron ourselves, we're familiar with the mineral sands market. We've been in the game ever since the 1980s. At one stage, we were the world's largest zirconium chemical producer, producing up to 20% of the world's zirconium chemicals, which were used for a wide array of applications, which I'll go through in due course. But we also knew that rare earths is a different industry for us, and we wanted to bring someone with the expertise in relation to the rare earths to help us commercialise what we've got on the ground. The really interesting product suite and that mix, the strategic mix of both the lights and the heavies. And that's why we've brought Energy Fuels in. With Energy Fuels and their facilities in Utah, we have a clear pathway to establish a US-Australia rare earth supply chain, with our minerals from the Wimmera being delivered into their facilities in Utah and processed for downstream customers in the US, in North America, and to Europe. And our experience to date with Energy Fuels has convinced us that we could not have made a better choice in partnering with Energy Fuels. Going back to our mineral sands history, look, we had a number of options on the table as we ran through the process, but ultimately we decided to stay in the business because we found the mineral sands part full of potential. And despite recent announcements in relation to the industry, which we view as temporary and short-term, there are significant potentials for growth. For those of you who aren't familiar so much with titanium or zircon and the mineral sand sector, allow me to just give you a quick background on what it's used for. So zircon, predominantly used in ceramics. Over 50% of the world's zircon is used in ceramics. And for titanium, well, everyone's vaguely familiar with it, is actually used predominantly in paint. So both of these are fundamental, quintessentially industrial minerals and grow at the historically demand with disposable income. Now, these are both also critical. These elements have specialty applications for which there are no substitutes. And the restrictions of movement of these materials, either direction, could have the power to disrupt global supply chains. While only 6% of the world's titanium is used in titanium metal production, this production chain is vital in ensuring the viability of the aerospace, medical, and military industries. And in terms of zircon, it's not so much talked about as much. The balance of the zircon demand stems from the chemical, foundry, and refractory markets. And while most of the zircon chemicals that we do produce is used in consumer applications, such as deodorants or as UV shielding agents that stop the curtains from fading, a small proportion of the zirconium is used in the production of hafnium, which is critical for semiconductors, chips, and the like. And there are only 75 tons of hafnium being produced annually, but that element in particular drives the modern economy. In addition to the hafnium component, the nuclear-grade zirconium is used in nuclear plants as nuclear fuel cells and as part of and without that zirconium, nuclear plants will not function. I guess, like many of you, in a world where while only a small proportion of these minerals and the applications are truly critical, ultimately, we rely on the commercial markets and applications as well. And it's been really interesting over the last 2 years as the narrative shifted about finding the balance between the industrial applications and those critical applications. Now, that's compounded recently into, it's interesting to stand here, just go back. It's actually an interesting time to stand here and talk about the mineral sands market, especially following last quarter's results of some of our players within the market. To borrow a recently popularized quote, what we're seeing within the market, we're seeing a rupture and not a transition. From the supply side of mineral sands, because of depleting resources, declining head grades, and increasing costs, their share of production has continued to decline. And what we've seen in that decline is that a number of smaller producers are taking their place in the supply side. And we see that continuing to grow over time. On the demand side of mineral sands, we've also seen a significant increase in production and processing capacity, which has vastly outstripped demand for their respective products. This has led to an aggressive price war between the various processors, and this has subsequently passed on to our raw material providers. Usually, this washes out relatively quickly within the market. It's a natural part of the cycle. However, this cycle in particular has been more protracted due to the access of cheap funding in other countries which are more familiar with these various industries. It is during these periods where price volatility will naturally increase. The effects of any excess supply will be felt more severely within the market, and likewise, the effects of any supply deficit will lead to more intense price spikes. And this is going to continue for some short time. Now, what I find really interesting in the history of these commodities, however, is that they always go around in circles. In the 1980s, when we first found the Donald Project, it was predominantly a titanium project. Those economics at the time really was driven purely on TI. Some days you could get $1,000 a tonne for zircon, some days you get close to zero. Zircon was merely a byproduct of the titanium market, and that fundamentally changed with the discovery of Ilucas Jacinth ambrosia, a truly one-of-a-kind asset, where at one stage it supplied 30% of the world's zircon, yet only 2% of the world's titanium. Through that, the titanium and the zircon industries effectively decoupled. While demand, by both being industrial minerals and both being correlated to disposable income, for the zirconium and titanium remained correlated, supply led to, so JA allowed both companies or the industry to have different supply responses to accommodate that. Apart from JA, 45% of the world's titanium industry, 45% of the world's titanium supply merely comes from titanium-only mines. And a further 25 to 35% come from mines where zircon form only 5% of the overall titanium supply. Why do I say that? So today, the world's titanium market is 8 million tons in terms of units, and the zircon market is 800,000 tons in terms of units, in terms of demand. So on average, the average mine and mineral sands must produce 10 tons of titanium and 1 ton of zircon for both titanium and zircon to be in balance. Now, in terms of hard rock mines, they're overly skewed to only produce titanium. So in due course, if we were to only ensure the titanium demand and supply is in balance, then naturally zircon will be short. I know this is a lot of numbers to be quoting, but for example, if we were, for those 8 million tons of titanium and the average zircon production was only 5%, which is what the average mine, once JA depletes, is, then zircon will be facing a supply, if driven by titanium market supply forces, of shortage of around 50%. And that's why projects like ours, with regards to Donald, is so important in terms of what we're trying to produce with the high zircon suite of materials that we do have. So at Donald, zircon is 20% of what we produce. So for every ton of TI, we'll produce 0.2 tons of zircon. And it's projects such as this, as JA come offline in 2 years' time, that are required to ensure the zircon market is in balance. Sorry, that's a lot of information, a lot of text. Look, in terms of where the project's at now, in relation to Donald, and in terms of our approvals, we've received all our approvals to be ready for construction. In terms of engineering, we're at advanced stage of engineering, starting the procurement of long lead items and moving into development. In terms of offtake, we've executed non-binding offtake agreements on our heavy mineral product, and we have all our rare earths going to Energy Fuels in relation to producing and separating light and heavy rare earth oxides. In terms of funding, we're working our way through. We've got most of our equity satisfied by the way of the joint venture agreement, and now we're working through project financing. Finally, in terms of construction, getting construction ready, we've got early works ongoing regards to the water pipeline, which has now been complete, and we're looking at, in terms of timetable, a final investment decision by the end of this quarter targeted. And with those timelines, we'll be the first project in the West in terms of speed to market outside of the major players such as Lynas and MP. This project will be the first rare earths project outside of those two in relation to the market in terms of timing. And the other thing that's relatively interesting, and I think it's worthwhile highlighting, is Victoria, rightly or wrongly in recent time, has had a reputation around being a challenging jurisdiction for mining proponents. Yes, there are rigorous environmental, social, and governance standards in Victoria. However, having these rules clearly set out in this day and age, in my mind, isn't necessarily a bad thing. For us as a proponent, we can't deal with uncertainty. Resources Victoria, as part of following the government's critical minerals roadmap, has really set out to refresh guidelines in relation to the standards for which we as a mining industry must bear. And as long as those are set out clearly, we and then as an industry can meet the guidelines of where they are. So from our perspective, the clarity in relation and from the Victorian government has been really beneficial for us to achieve our approvals, being the first greenfields mine to be approved in Victoria in recent time. And our experience is not alone. Victoria has recently permitted 4 new further other projects, and there's also been a 40% reduction in approval assessment times since the release of the critical minerals roadmap in Victoria. And finally, just going back to the timetable, in relation to our project, we look forward to announcing in due course a final investment decision as early as the end of this quarter, and we're targeting production in relation to this project at the end of 2027, early 2028. I've left the majority of the rare earths market and that exciting part for Mark, and I'm sure he'll cover it in a lot more detail. But thanks everyone for your time, and really appreciate it being presenting here today.
Okay, thank you very much, Tiger, for that presentation, and we will get Tiger back up on the stage later when we open up the floor for questions. Now for the suspense. And Joel, how are we doing this? Are you going to call him on your phone and we'll put him on speaker, or we got something a bit more sophisticated? All right, good. Let me introduce Mark while we're getting him online. He's been the President and CEO of Energy Fuels since 2018. From 2011 to 2015, he worked as Executive General Manager of Production for Paladin Energy, a uranium producer with assets in Australia and Africa. In 2015, he joined Energy Fuels as Chief Operating Officer before becoming CEO in 2018, and he has also been President of the company since 2017. Mark's experience also includes management of the Beverley uranium mine owned by General Atomics Australia and the Highland mine owned by Cameco Corporation in the US, and advising several of the largest players in the uranium supply sector, including BHP Billiton, Rio Tinto and Marubeni. Until recently, he served for a decade as Chair of the Australian Uranium Council. He's a registered professional engineer and holds a Bachelor of Science in Mining Engineering from the University of Arizona. And as I mentioned earlier, he's joining us from Lakewood, Colorado, where Energy Fuels is based. And I believe, Mark, we have you on the line, and I hope you can hear us because we can see you.
Okay, well, I think, people hear me? I'm joining from Colorado.
We can. Can we give him a nod? Give him a thumbs up?
All right.
So, Mark, I'm going to leave the stage and I'm going to leave the spotlight to you.
All right. Well, thank you for that introduction. And I was planning to be in Sydney for this luncheon and for this talk, but got diverted to DC, where it is a beehive of activity on all things critical minerals. Just a little background, and in addition to my bio, is I am an Australian citizen, and my passport says born in Phoenix, Arizona. So you can tell by my accent that I'm definitely American born. And I've spent half my adult life in Australia working, and I'm sure there's a number of you in the audience that we've talked numerous times. So really excited to give you an update on, one, we have this great relationship with Astron and the Donald Project we're very excited about, but also an update on our activities in the United States. We are currently the 3rd largest market cap publicly traded rare earth company in the world. after MP and after Linus, and we have a market cap around 5 billion US dollars. And so we've made some remarkable progress. So I can't see my slide deck, but I do have a paper copy, and I'm assuming you can see it. Is that correct? Is that correct? Can people see the slide deck?
Over.
Yeah, I couldn't hear you. I couldn't hear
I
you.
said,
but
we can see it, Mark, so you can proceed.
Okay, all
Yeah.
right, all right. Again, the lovely, gotta love virtual. Look at this first slide that we have is taken not far from the White Mesa Mill in Utah. And we are building a globally significant critical mineral company. And we couldn't be more excited on the progress we've made, particularly over the last 5 years or so. So next slide, I may be making some forward-looking statements. We are listed on the New York Stock Exchange American and also on Toronto. If you go to slide 3, just want to highlight really Energy Fuels is 3 companies in one. We have a long history in the uranium business, and my work in Australia with Heathgate in South Australia, where I was country manager, and then my work with John Borshoff with Paladin, with the Langer Heinrich and Kayla Cara mines. So I have a long history in around the globe, but also in Australia, working for Australian companies in the uranium sector. And what we've done is we took the attributes of a uranium processing facility and we converted that into the capability to process rare earths, particularly rare earths that contain uranium. And so that's how we ended up with this second part of our strategy, which was rare earths. Now, the feed sources of the rare earths come from the heavy mineral sands deposits like the Donald project with Tiger had mentioned in our great partnership we have with Astron. So we have the uranium business, the rare earth business, and the heavy mineral sands business, and that equals Energy Fuels. 3 sectors in one. And I do not know of anyone who has ever undertaken putting these 3 sectors together to reshore our capabilities in the rare earth business with processing in the United States. So we're really excited about that and where we are going as a company. So if you go to the next slide, which is slide number 4, the products that we make are for providing these critical technologies, mainly for energy and power, whether it be nuclear fuel assemblies for nuclear power plants, but also we have the ability to process vanadium, which is also a critical element. You've got robotics, you've got electric vehicles, you got defense, and so the products that we produce or are forging ahead to produce cover all these critical areas. And I was in DC, I got back midday today, as at a number of meetings with the US government, and all it was critical minerals, critical minerals. So, you know, the good thing about where we are right now is the world has woke up and said, you have to have these critical minerals for these advanced technologies and for energy. You go to the next slide, slide 5. This is the world, and this is a map of where we have projects around the world. And again, as I said, we started as a uranium producer in the United States, and you can see the blue is mainly our uranium assets. And we have the White Mesa Mill in Utah and Blanding, Utah, and we're headquartered in Lakewood, Colorado. But then over the last couple years, we've secured heavy mineral sand deposits outside of the United States, where we have a project in Brazil called Bahia. We have the Donald Project joint venture that we're working with Tiger and Astron on, which is shovel ready. And we also have what was called the Toliara Project in Madagascar. We renamed it to Vara Mada to be a more appropriate naming for the project in Madagascar itself. And we also are looking at other opportunities globally. So we are replicating the China plan for monazite sands in the United States at Energy Fuels with the projects that we're securing and the people we're partnering with. So it is a very large footprint. We cover a lot of time zones and it is exhausting, but it's global, it's got scale, and we acquired these assets over the last 5 years before this big rush for the critical minerals, and particularly, as Tiger said, both the lights and the heavies. Next slide. So this slide is a little busy, but it shows we have the mines on the left and we have the end products on the right. In the middle is the White Mesa Mill, which has been in operation since 1980 for 45 years. And we retrofitted it to process rare earths as well as uranium. And we're really proud of the fact that we did this and we did it in the United States. We did it quickly and we did it at very low cost. So currently we're producing uranium. If you look at the blue, uranium goes into the White Mesa Mill, and you come out with uranium, vanadium, if we're recovering the vanadium, potentially medical isotopes. But then we can switch the mill over and stop producing uranium, and we can process the rare earths, the monazite sands that we get from projects like Donald in due course. And we also get material from Mosaic in Florida and Georgia that we can process as well. So it's unique that the mill can do one or the other, but not both. But then to the right, you can see these significant number of critical materials, uranium, vanadium, the rare earth oxides, which includes a whole pile of different things, mainly the NdPr, which are the lights, and the Dy and the Tb and samarium and others. Also, the titanium and zirconium come from the heavy mineral sands mining process that Tiger was talking about, and it does not have to go to the mill. So the concentrate that comes from these heavy mineral sands is the monazite sands, and that's what was shipped to Utah for processing. It's a very high value proposition. So if you turn to the next slide, on slide number 7, this is a picture of the White Mesa Mill, built as a uranium vanadium processing facility and in good nick, and it's been around, and it's the largest uranium processing facility in the United States. It's fully licensed, permitting. We've got like 150 people there. It's licensed to produce up to 8 million pounds of uranium per year. It is the only facility that can recycle natural uranium feeds, and it has a long history of doing that. Over 40 years, I go back with the family who built it, and it is the only facility in the United States that can process monazite sands, recover the uranium, and deal with the thorium. So it is a very significant facility. We are working on what we call phase 2, which will be to the north of these buildings, we're building a facility the size of Linus for both the lights and the heavies. The facility, as I said, as it is just a uranium facility, up to 8 million pounds of uranium, and to the north of it, towards the mountains in the background, we have 5,500 acres. We have already completed a feasibility study. We've already submitted the permit documents for a facility to produce the equivalent of Linus scale at the White Mesa Mill, to be able to do both the rare earths and the uranium completely separate. So when we get phase 2 in, we don't have to do one or the other. We can do both simultaneously. Next slide. So early on, we took the focus on monazite. And the reason we picked monazite, because it is the best feed of rare earths out there, because it has the lights and the heavies and uranium that we can monetize. And we have the infrastructure, the know-how, and the permits and the tailings facilities to handle the unprocessed material that is not, the tailings from the processing process. It's super high grade, 50 to 60% rare earth oxides. It has high levels, as I said, of NdPr and the heavies. It is actually low cost to process. if you have the ability to deal with the uranium and the thorium. We get a value add from the uranium and we get very high recoveries. So if you look at the right there, those are the mixer settlers for our rare earth processing facility. In the mill, the picture I showed you before that showed the big building in previous slide, we have the ability to recover uranium, vanadium, and the light rare earths and a heavy concentrate. I don't know where that's done anywhere in the world. And we did it inside one building, and we built out those capabilities for $20 million. So we're very proud that we were able to do that and do it quickly. Next slide. So when you look at what we're doing, we've already produced rare earth oxides at commercial scale. It's been qualified by POSCO for pushing into permanent rare earth magnets in electric vehicles today. We currently and just completed piloting for DY, and DY is one of the heavies that is required for the most durable permanent electric motors. And we are currently piloting TB, which is also required in these high efficiency permanent electric motor magnets. So we're also working on advancing that building that I showed you with where we can do the uranium, the vanadium, or the rare earths to also recover commercially the heavies. And we plan to have that well advanced at the end of this year in 2026. Now, in the phase 2 plant that is in for permitting, and we've done the feasibility study, it will be standalone on the lights and the heavies in the future, but that's looking out to like 2028. But we are going to actually add on the ability to commercially recover heavies. The phase 2 feasibility study, it was completed, and what it shows is that we have the ability to produce around 6,000 tons of NdPr per year, including about 275 tons of DY and 80 tons of TB, and the potential to recover other rare earths. And as I said, we expect to be in construction in 27, and sometime in mid to late 2028, we'll have the capability to be at the scale of Linus. Next slide. This is an interesting one because this is the periodic table, but what is highlighted in green are elements that have a direct relationship with radioactivity. And that is our secret sauce. Everybody says, well, we are light on radioactivity. We don't have uranium. We don't have thorium. Energy Fuels says the more, the merrier. We want radioactive elements because we can process at the White Mesa Mill. In addition, some of those things, the elements highlighted in yellow, show where there are some located elements that also can have radioactivity in it. So really, we are maximizing our strengths and our ability and our permits and our infrastructures and our licenses to capitalize on radioactive elements when others cannot. You've seen some of the problems that people have had. For example, Linus had issues in Malaysia with radioactivity, and it was very, very low levels, but it became an issue for them. And it becomes an issue for a lot of the heavy mineral sands producers historically because they had monazite and it created issues. So it is not an issue for Energy Fuels, and we actually like it. Next slide, slide 11. I won't touch on this too much because this is the Donald project in Victoria that is shovel ready. And this is our joint venture with Astron. Tiger, mentioned we're looking at a final investment decision in Q1, taking the monazite from that project, and about half the value of that project is in the rare earths, shipping it to the mill. Very high in heavies, very high. And that is a great selling point in today's world that we're in. And again, it's in Australia, it's not in some developing country. We are advancing this, and as Tiger mentioned, the total project funding is required is about 500 million Australian. In the US, we talk US dollars. around $340 million, but we have had some conditional support from some of this particularly EFA and the Development Bank. Next slide. This is slide 12. I want to talk a little bit about Veramata, formerly Toliara. We believe this is the best undeveloped heavy mineral sand rare earth project with monazite in the entire world. It is located in Madagascar, but many of you will have heard of Toliara, and we acquired Base Resources a little over a year ago because we believe that this is better than Mount Weld. We think it's better than the Mountain Pass deposit in the United States. In California, we think it is going to be the lowest cost critical mineral project in the world that goes on for potentially over 100 years. We did the updated feasibility study on it as a post-tax internal an NPV of about 1.8 billion US, and also has, we believe, a projected EBITDA of around 500 million US dollars per year. But we still have to get all the final approvals with the Madagascar government to develop this project. But we see it as a game changer, world-class by every stretch of the imagination. And you could not have a better project in a world that is hungry for these critical minerals. Next slide. In addition to Donald and Veramata, we acquired a project in Brazil called Bahia. It's a smaller project. We're doing exploration and drilling and moving towards a resource there, advancing to permits. It's a smaller project, but it also has a good endowment of monazite, and we're looking at developing that as well. So next slide, slide 14. Some of you might have noticed that we announced that we had entered into a scheme document with Australian Strategic Materials, ASM, ASX listed, based in Perth. They have focused on the metallization and alloys in South Korea, and they currently have capacity of doing about 1,300 tons of alloy, neodymium iron boron alloy currently, and ramping that up to increase that up further to 3,600 tons of alloy in the near future, and can go up to 5,600 tons in Korea in due course. And we see this and saw this as a very critical link to our company going from the mines to alloys, not mines to magnets yet, but we acquired this, or in the process of acquiring it. Still is subject to shareholder vote and full implementation of this scheme. But we think this is progressing really well, and we hope to have everything done by June of this year. Next slide. In addition, ASM had plans to also have not just a Korean plant, but an American plant, which they call American Plant AMP, in the United States of America. And they were looking at a number of states to put that plant in, including Utah, where our White Mesa mill is, or close in the same proximity of that. And we're very excited about that as well, too, because ASM is currently making alloys and selling it to a number of customers. They have the skills, the know-how, and we can import those skills and know-how into the United States, and puts us in a much stronger position to integrate from the mining end right through the alloys. In addition to that, the acquisition includes the Dubbo project in New South Wales that a number of you have probably heard of, which is quite a significant polymetallic. It's fairly complicated, but it also has a lot of rare earths in it. And we think that there could be a approach there with heap leaching that could provide a concentrate that could be processed at the White Mesa mill and reduce the capital costs. We still have a significant amount of work to do on that, but we have done initial work with Astron on that. So if you go to the next slide, slide 16, this just kind of shows where we are driving the company from a mine to alloy company. And if you look on the right-hand side, you look at the mining and beneficiation, we can do that today. We can crack and leach and recover the uranium and the rare earths. We can separate into separated oxides into the NdPr and the Dy and the Tb. And then with the acquisition or hopeful close of the ASM transaction, we'll have the metals and alloying step. And the next step is magnets. So we're really, really pushing for integration. Now, what is interesting is we have a person that worked for General Motors, was the top procurement executive for General Motors for critical materials for GM. She saw this story, heard this story. She quit GM and came to work for Energy Fuels, and she's working on those back integration steps for our company. So the little graphic shows that with White Mesa in Utah, bringing material from Brazil or Madagascar or Donald or potentially the Double project to the White Mesa mill for processing, and then has the ability to send that back to go to the metal and alloy step, and potentially in due course with the American metal and alloy plant. We are building integration really like nobody else out there other than the Chinese. And we are also getting a lot of inbounds from various companies that have other deposits or other steps. They see our critical mass, the progress we're making, the strong balance sheet we have, and we have approximately 900 million US dollars deployable through both 300 million of liquid working capital in a convert we did with Goldman Sachs for 700 million with a coupon rate of 0.75%. Now that is cheap money, and people continue to throw money at us. So if you go to slide 17, the next slide, rare earth prices are really skyrocketing over $107 US, it's $1,000 per ton, it's $107 per kilogram. Dysprosium is about $1 million per ton, and terbium is $3.75 million per ton. These are non-China pricing. People are appreciating and realizing that you're going to have to pay more if you want non-China. And when you look at the 6,000 tons of our phase 2 of NdPr, the dysprosium terbium, that is well over $1 billion of revenue if we get all these projects up, running, and processing as per our plans. And those are at substantial premiums, 2, 3, 4 times greater than typical China prices. So if you go to the next slide, it just shows the individual projects, whether it be Donald, Vermont, Bahia. We do have offtake with Chemours in the United States and Florida and Georgia, building up our supply and feed chain. And this is very similar to what the Chinese are doing currently with monazite. And then with the White Mesa Mill production capacity, over 6,000 tons, the DY and TB, this is about 40% of the US requirements for the lights, the NdPr, and over 100% of the TB and DY of the United States requirements. And on the far right there, you can see the very high grades that we have in our concentrate of the NdPr. But when you go to the lower graph, you can see that when you compare us to like their Donald project, Varamata, Bahia, Chemours, and you compare it to, for example, Mountain Pass, they have no heavies. We have heavies. So if you look at that bottom graph on the right, you can see the samarium, we have about the same as Mountain Pass. When you look at the TB, you can't see it on the graph because they don't have much TB. And if you look at the DY on the graph, you don't see them because they don't have much DY. So we see the monazite strategy as an important strategy, or particularly a combination of the lights and the heavy. So this last slide is a little bit busy. So we've got this significant strategy that's unfolding with feasibility studies on the phase 2 expansion, Vermont, also updated financial numbers on the Donald project, and we're advancing to be world significant producer of critical minerals by that 2029-2030 timeframe. We've got the balance sheet that I mentioned with the 900 million US dollars deployable. People still want to throw money at us because of the great advancements we're making as a company. But in the meantime, we're still producing uranium. We are the largest producer of uranium in the United States. We are producing around 2 million pounds or approaching 2 million pounds of uranium production at $30 per pound when the price of uranium is currently north of 80. So we're going to be generating material cash flow, and we are generating material cash flow, which effectively pays for all our overhead costs on the uranium business right now while we're advancing this aggressive strategy, which my goal is, this may be a forward-looking statement, to be over a $10 billion US company and a world significant producer of all these critical elements, over 10 in the United States. And that is our story, and happy to open it up for questions whenever it is appropriate. Thank you.
Well, Mark, I hope you can hear us still, because we are about to open up for questions, and you can tell from the response from the people here today that we did really appreciate your presentation as well, and no IT glitches so far. So next time you're in Washington, DC, could you let them know that we have capacity here? We're good for the submarines as well.
No more dead subs. No more dead subs.
That's right, the Virginia class.
Nuclear ones now.
So, Tiger, would you be as kind enough to join us on the stage as well? And this will again test our IT, but so far so good. And we're going to take questions from the floor. And James, you've got a microphone there, and we've got 2 microphones. So I'm assuming the questions from the floor through the microphone, Mark will be able to hear. Is that correct? If the questions are for Mark? Yep. Okay. All right. Well, let's open it up for questions. If you could keep your questions relatively short. I know sometimes we get 2 or 3 stage questions, or even 3 questions in a row from the same person, but that's fine. We've got some time on our hands. So time permitting, let's start. Who's going to go first?
All right. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Great. Look, it was a good chart for the Donald project and the contribution on the heavies for a lot of miners, and this is probably more directed to Mark first, but kind of shows the importance of Donald, I guess. I noticed the Donald contributes a lot more heavies than some of the others in your mix, and you had a targeted mix down the bottom. If you're Linus or Mountain Pass, you just produce what you got, I guess. How did you kind of come up with that targeted mix? Was that you had to find the feed that the market wanted? Were you really just going with what was available to you as feedstock, trying to get an idea of how strategic the customers see that heavy supply that you've got and what it could mean for further expansions and so on?
Yeah. Look at the monazite are definitely higher than the bastnaesite deposits. And the Donald project is actually a great project to lead off with because it has those really, really high grades of heavies. But what we're finding as a company is, and we're talking like over 20 potential off-takers right now that want non-China supply. And they want not just the NdPr, but they want the heavies between 1 to 2% thereabouts to mix with the NdPr to come up with the high efficiency, resilient, permanent electric motors that they need in their drivetrains. Okay. So what we get, like Vermont is lower in heavies, but very low cost in NdPr and certainly the heavy mineral sands. But Donald, on the other hand, is very high. So we see that it's important to have more than one source, having 3 or 4 of these sources to meet our requirements for offtake with our end customers in due course.
I can steal another question, I might. I'll be very
Well,
quick.
we'll allow it.
Thank you. I do appreciate that. Look, you know, the Astron numbers for their study in MPV say phase one, but your numbers say phase two. So clearly you're committed, and should Astron shareholders, or I guess the market, be thinking about the fact that Astron is at maybe higher rates of production than what's outlined in their study?
Well, yeah, look at the one thing that when with getting Donald going is very important for both of us as joint venture partners. But at the same time, we have what we call that phase one plant, you know, where I said we can share the uranium mill and we can process the uranium or the rare earths. So we actually have an intermediate step before we have the phase two ready later in like 28, you know, 29. So we fully expect to get more material from Astron before we have the phase two up and running, but we also have the infrastructure to shut down the uranium and process the monazite as required with the Donald material without having to have phase two ready.
Yeah, and I think if I could just answer in relation to the Donald project, and phase one and phase two, even together, they represent a small proportion of what's actually in the ground there. For us, in terms of the rare earths component, we've announced the xenotime in relation to phase one and the mining license area. We know through our drilling and going back through historic drill cores that the ratio for lights to heavies are very consistent across our resource base. And you see that through with the other projects in the Wimmera as well, whether it's Iluka's Wimmera project or the like. And if it does indeed continue on through, that would make Donald the most significant heavy rare earths project in the world. That's definitely a forward-looking statement. So.
Okay. But yeah, the quantities of phase one at Donald is around 7,000 tons of monazite per year, which we can handle in our phase one plant. Going to phase two, and as Tiger says, there's scalability beyond that, about 14,000 tons of monazite. That's about 25% of the feed required that we need for our phase two plant. But the 10,000 tons of monazite per year is what we can currently process from our phase one plant. So you can see where that 7,000 tons to 14,000 tons really fits nicely into a stepping stone that we have that others would not have.
Thank you, Mark. Our next question is from down here. Yep.
Thank you very much, Tiger and Mark. It's well known that the deposits in the Wimmera are very fine grained. Can you point to a precedent where an operation has successfully recovered down to 20 microns that you're proposing to do?
Yeah. Yep. There's been recent developments in Kazakhstan from some of the sands over there that have already done it. I think the technology has moved a long way from the old days when the cutoff of mineral sands is 75 microns. It eventually went to 38. Now we can recover down to 20 microns, no problems.
In an actual operation, can you?
Yeah, in
point to one?
Kazakhstan. Yeah. OV's plant over there has a D50 of around 50 microns and down to 20 microns in relation to their size. And MT supplies the spirals to them in relation to the plant. They had some recent issues, but they were commercially operating for 3 years, and the issues weren't related to their recoveries that they were achieving.
Yeah, we're also very confident. I agree, echo with Tiger, and we also have access to a number of the technical people from Base Resources that also are on technical advisory board with through the joint venture and everything. And we believe it is possible, and we certainly wouldn't be investing in Donald joint venture if we didn't think it was possible. So we're quite comfortable with that. And Mineral Technology's done a lot of really great work and test work. So we're comfortable with that.
Okay, thank you. Next question.
Thank you taking my questions. My question is to Mark. I look at your assets, like you got 7 assets and 3 assets at production stage. And just check your financial last 3 years. Your revenue increased compared to 2003, 100%. But actually, you produced like $78 million. But this year you lost almost $100 million. But the 3 years ago you actually made money. So I'm very new to about your company. So can you give us like a story for what happened actually for that 3 years?
Yeah, look at the uranium business, which has been our core business forever. I mean, I go back 50 years with our assets. Was clobbered after Fukushima. You know, in 2011, you had the tsunami that took out the reactors in Japan, and the uranium business, the price of uranium dropped, and so all the uranium producers were just dying since 2011, and you saw most of them, all of them shut down. You had Boss Resources, the Honeymoon project wasn't operating. Paladin's assets were not operating. They went into bankruptcy, and there was almost no uranium production in the world from the smaller producers. Some of the companies, even companies like Cameco, cut back their production by like 75%. So it was a very difficult time through that 12, 13, 14, 15. And more recently, in the last 2 or 3 years, the price of uranium has come up. The focus on nuclear power has improved. The bipartisan support for nuclear has improved. And so now we're able to turn the corner on that. So yeah, we were losing money. Now we made money a couple of years ago because we sold a uranium asset that we had on the books for $8 million, and we sold it for $120 million. And we sold it because we needed the cash. But now we are ramping up our uranium production. We are building up our revenue stream. We are pushing to 2 million pounds of uranium production, between 1.5 and 2. The cost of uranium production is about $30 a pound, and we're going to sell it at somewhere between $70 and $80 a pound. And you can do the math and see that we're going to start generating some real positive cash off of the uranium business while we're putting the rest of these pieces of the puzzle together on our rare earth strategy. So that's why you've seen the losses, because we weren't producing anything, and we're advancing a rare earth strategy, but now we're producing uranium at very low cost structures, and I believe our margins will be better than a Boss Resources and or a Paladin in Africa.
Thank you, Mark. We've got time for a few more questions. Is anybody holding the mic? We've got a few keen. Rob, maybe we'll go up here and then we'll go to Rob. Oh, then we'll go up the back there and then that might do it, I think. See how we go.
This is a question to Tiger. I saw that you had to get some radiation permitting for Donald. Could you I'm just interested in that. How much was it hard? Could you talk to that a little bit, please?
Look, I think in relation to the radiation permitting, we had to get a radiation management plan done at the state level. And that was done through the Department of Health, where it was assessing a radiation risk to workers. And, mineral sands, monazite, naturally occurring radiation, we can easily measure the exposure to potential radiation to potential workers and so forth. And we comply well within the limits of what's there. And the Victorian government's very comfortable in relation to that. And in terms of transport, around the licensing with monazite and monazite sands, Class 7 materials move in Victoria, in Melbourne, on our streets every day with surveying equipment, medical equipment and the like. So it wasn't an issue getting that radiation license in relation to the transport either. Look, we've got to have a sensible conversation around that. And we can even in Victoria.
Where's Rob? Rob down here.
That's a question for Mark. Assuming the ASM transaction completes sort of mid-year or so, And that will then give you access to the metallization technology that they're currently using at the Ochung plant and then potentially in the US as well. What would Energy Fuels' interest then be of going further downstream?
Well, we take it a step at a time, okay? And as I said, we have Deb Benethan, former exec from GM, working for us. You know, we're gonna take it step by step and see what makes sense. We do know, though, that getting to an alloy step is very important in terms of how we are able to build on our margins, because the Chinese look at from the mining step to an electric vehicle. Okay, they get one margin. It's really that full suite. They don't look at the individual steps. So we think that the metallization and alloys helps increase our margins, in some cases up to 20%. And then the next step is the magnets, which is really a very specialty area, but we're not saying we're not going to go to that step. But right now, we're comfortable with this next step to the alloys, and we'll see what comes out of it. I mean, we're going to be able to produce with phase 2 the scale of Linus in the United States, we believe, at better cost structures, and be able to produce enough rare earths for up to 5 or 6 million electric vehicles per year, or drones, or wind turbines, or refrigeration units that want to have high efficiency. So we're going big, but we're also focused on the low cost, and we're looking at the importance of each of those steps, because if you don't have those steps, you're vulnerable to having to go to China for a step. So watch the space. We're not saying we're doing magnets yet, but we also said we weren't doing metals and alloys yet. So step at a time.
Thanks, Mark.
Rob, are you looking for some New South Wales investment opportunities you can pitch? I hope so. Balranald, there's some stuff down Balranald, right? We can.
You and I, Steve.
We'll talk. We'll talk. Yeah. Okay, we got one more question up the back here. Thanks, and then we'll wrap up the formalities.
Congratulations, Mark. Russell Howard from Thea Metals here in Sydney. Well done on putting together different assets globally to vertically integrate the chain. That's obviously what we need ex-China. I'm here to tell you that in Australia, we're developing an innovative technology to make rare earth oxides in Australia without using solvent extraction technology. If you're interested, look at us online, Thea Metals, and we're trying to raise capital.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, yeah.
A sales pitch dressed as a question.
I wanted to make a comment, but look, there's a lot of, I think in this whole world of rare earths, there's going to be a lot of innovation over time. We are also not opposed to looking at innovation, but we're firm believers that you've got to stick with proven technologies until you know you've proven up something that's better. Solvent extraction works. You know, one of the other secret sauces we have as a company is we have 45 years of solvent extraction for uranium and vanadium extraction. So to do solvent extraction for the rare earths was just another step for us. So we're very comfortable with it, but if you can come up with something that's better, we could be interested.
Alongside
There you go.
modular.
You've almost paid for your lunch ticket there. Would you like to rejoin the table, Tiger? We do, before you leave us, Mark, and before you leave us as well, we do traditionally present gifts at the end of our speaking events. Unfortunately, our stock has run out, so the gift is on its way. But those of you who have been to the Mining Club lunches before will know what the gift is. It's a bespoke Eureka flag that's made to the original specifications of 1854, which, as I've said previously, was originally the flag of what was called the Ballarat Reform League, first flown on 29th of November 1854 on Bakery Hill, when 10,000 miners gathered together in protest against overbearing government regulation and taxation. They burned their mining licences and swore to stand together to defend their common interests. As I've said, there was a pub burnt down and some other issues, but we won't go into that detail. 3 days later, on the morning of the 3rd of December, as dawn broke, the battle raged as the government troops stormed the stockade. At least 22 miners died that morning, potentially up to 60, although the numbers aren't certain, and at least 5 soldiers, members of the military that stormed the stockade, died as well. It was a pivotal moment in Australian history, one of those times when you remember back fondly to learning about this for the first time and potentially even visiting Ballarat and the scene of those events. It's a flag which has been used by others from time to time. In some respects, Mark, it's our very own Stars and Stripes. It's a symbol of solidarity against government oppression and overreach. And as I said earlier, Tiger and Mark, the flag is in the mail, as they say. So you will both receive, pardon? A forward-looking statement. Well, I hope that this flag will fly proudly over the White Mesa Mill at some stage, because I can imagine the confusion of all the foreign spies in the hills above, looking down with their binoculars and seeing this flag put up on a flagpole and thinking, what is going on here? Which country is this? We better report to our superiors elsewhere. But in all seriousness, Tiger and Mark, thank you so much for taking the time to come here today and present to us. Thank you, Mark, for your patience in overcoming, the IT challenges of doing this for the first time. And I've got to say, I'm as impressed as I am relieved that it's gone so smoothly. And also to you, Tiger, for being here in the flesh. We wish you all the greatest of success with your endeavours. We can see, Mark, why you weren't able to be here, given that what's on your desk at the moment in terms of your workload too. We appreciate the time that you've given us, the information that you've shared, the answers that you've provided, and we look forward to watching with great success your venture as it progresses into the future. Will you please join me in thanking Mark and Tiger for joining us? But just a few. Thank you, Mark. Just a few formalities before we wrap up proceedings here. Those of you that were here last time will remember Julian spoke about some changes potentially to the Leading Edge event series, and there was a meeting with club sponsors recently to talk about what that might look like. And it has been decided this year that there will be 3 Leading Edge showcase events held, starting at they'll be at lunchtime events, 12 for 12:30. The plan is for 4 different companies to present over that period for 15 minutes each, plus some introduction and question time availability. The event dates have been chosen to avoid other fixtures, including Diggers and Dealers, IMARC, Noosa Mining, and RIU Explorers. The 3 events will be held on March the 5th, July the 2nd, and September the 4th to try and avoid as much as possible Christmas holiday and school holiday madness and other things. The draft themes for the 3 events are Gold and Silver on March the 5th, Copper on July the 2nd, and Energy in September. You'll receive details of these events, of course, from the club in due course. The venue is being confirmed at the moment, but that's the plan on leading edge events. So they will continue in a new and renewed format with fewer events, but with a stronger focus on those 3 events this year. Our lunch events will continue as normal every second month, the first Thursday of every second month. So now being February, you can guess the next one will be the first Thursday of April. And again, you'll receive a reminder about that in your email. I think from memory, we have Eris. Do you know that, James, whether we've got Eris resources lined up? Now, don't hold me to that. And they may need to do it by video, but I think we might have Eris resources, but once that's confirmed, you'll receive an invitation to that event as well. So thank you to everybody for your patience with the presentation change today and the circumstances. I really do appreciate you sticking with us through that. I'm sure you would have stuck with us if the IT had have gone down anyway and, we were looking at a blank screen. I'm sure that everybody would have hung around for that too. But I'm glad that it worked well, and we've created a precedent now, maybe. But it's also great to see everybody here in person, and we look forward to seeing you in person again in April. Thank you.